Aha!
Hi, welcome back to the channel. I want to start off this episode with a little background on myself. I graduated as an engineer back in 2010, and I started out working in a research team on electrical grid balancing topics. You might say that I have an interest in technology and energy, but also in the environment. I realize that topics like global warming, climate change, and more specifically the impact of man on climate change are not easy to discuss in the open space that social media is, but nevertheless, I would like to discuss something in that area today. Because my eye fell upon an article about the European Union wanting to label gas plants as green energy sources. Now, my immediate reaction was, whoa! How can we justify energy production based on fossil fuels being labeled as green? I read a bit deeper into the article and into the proposition by the EU, and it stated that gas plants being commissioned by 2030 or later shouldn't emit over 100 grams of CO2 per produced kilowatt hours. And it was mentioned that the 100 grams per kilowatt hours was a very stringent condition in the commissioning process. Now, after reading that, it was no longer the possibility of gas being labeled as green that was on my mind, rather that, so to say, stringent condition. And I will explain why this stuck with me all day. If you look at the average annual power consumption of a European household, then it's about 3,500 kilowatt hours per year. In the United States, the average goes up to about 4,500 kilowatt hours per year. If we would translate that into the CO2 emitted by a gas plant commissioned in 2030, then every household throws in 1 kilograms of CO2 per day into the air. And that's a little over 2 pounds per day. Now, one bag of a kilogram of CO2 doesn't seem so much. But we need to remember it's not just my family or your family that is doing that. It's also our neighbors, their neighbors, and their neighbors, and so on, and so on, and so on, and on, and on, and on. We should picture ourselves that about 7 p.m. we all go out with our bag of 1 kilograms of CO2, count down, just like we do at New Year's. So let's do that. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy CO2 day! And then we shake out that little bag into the air and we feast. And the next day, we do the same thing. And the next day, again. And then again. And again. And again. And again. And again. And everybody does that. What a lovely picture that is. Now, I gotta tell you, my stomach was turned upside down thinking about it like that. Now, I'm not saying that I have all the answers ready. I do have some ideas though, and I'm working on it with some passionate people. So I've got good hopes that we can realize something good. And I know that my team is not the only team that's working on this, and that when all the little bits come together, it will be a strong and coherent and long-lasting solution. I'm not even saying here that if global warming was a fact and if man really had an effect on that our effect needs to be addressed. I just think that regardless of global warming, it couldn't hurt to scale down our CO2 emissions. And for those skeptics out there that worry that all those efforts will have a negative economic impact, I will state right here and right now that in the short term, yes, it will most likely drain some cash out of your bank accounts, my bank account too. But, and this is important, we're not doing this for our generation. We are doing this for the future generations. And I honestly do believe that the economic impact in the long run will be very positive. And right here and right now, we will counter the ones saying, if there is no global warming or man cannot have an impact on global warming, then why burn all that cash? Well, it's simple math really. It's the choice between burning some cash to move away from fossil fuels or keep burning fossil fuels and not think about alternatives. If we follow the second path, we might be too late in finding alternatives to empty oil fields. I mean, it's a question of supply and demand, and the supply is running out, but the demand is rising. We need to think about solutions, and there are no longer solutions in fossil fuels because we're running out of oil. Not today, not tomorrow, not the next year, but in a very short timescale. Okay, so thanks for bearing with me through this semi-technical or scientific topic, but I do believe that it's an important one and it needs to be addressed. See you in the next one. Cheers!